Hey everybody, it's Fred with Intent Paintball. As you can see here, I've got a Nova N4, aka the Odin. It's already been really customized, so that's why it doesn't look like a stock one. But what we're going to go over today is the N4 Odin Trigger Upgrade Kit. I already had it installed, I've played with it already, it's freaking amazing. But besides that, some of this you're going to see here is going to be slightly staged. You're going to see that I don't have a trigger in here. I do have the plate. You can see in here I have the trigger already transferred over to the upgraded plate. So that's the only difference really. You're going to have to transfer that over. But with that being said, let's go ahead and open up the package and let's take a look at what you actually get with this. So as I mentioned earlier, you get your trigger plate. It is definitely different. The biggest thing is there used to be a notch, and you'll see it when I pull out the trigger plate of the stock one. There's a notch, which actually added a lot of forward and backwards slop to the trigger pull. This actually helps clean a lot of that up. So there's that. You get a couple of screws that come in the package, but you can just use the ones that came with your trigger. It's not going to make a difference. On here, you can see those extra trigger screws right there. There should be another little baggie with all the goodness parts going on here. So let's get that open and I'll explain a couple of things that are going on here. So all of this goes inside your your spool. So that's that back section back here. There is this brass piece, has a tiny little hole in it. That tiny little hole corresponds to this tiny little rod, and that just slides right in there. That's actually, I believe, what they call the actuator pin. So when you pull the trigger, there's this little piece here that's on a pivot, and what happens is that when you pull that trigger, it's going to bump it forward, and it's going to knock the little pin forward, and that's how it releases the air. The last piece that you get here as well is a little brass piece. It only goes in one way, so there's a little bit of a lip on here, and there's a full through hole on here, and of course a little bit of an O-ring. So that goes together that way. So once that pin moves forward, you can see it kind of pokes through. That actually is the full firing sequence from within the spool itself. So let's go ahead and get into this. I'm going to go ahead and pull this off. So you can see I already got the grip screws backed out. So I already got a little bit ahead of the game. So what you're going to do is, yes, definitely pull those out. Set those aside. You're going to pull straight down because you have that transfer pipe from the reg going all the way up into the body. And as I mentioned earlier, I already had this installed, so here's that other trigger plate. That's the stock one, the silver one. You get the green one in the baggie, and you can see that there's that, there's no longer the notch right there. So that kind of evens up a little bit of that slop when you pull that trigger back, and it bumps this part, and in turn it pivots and hits this brass piece, and you're off to the races. So that actually fires the whole thing. So like I mentioned, it comes with 2 extra trigger screws that go on the plate. You're more than welcome to switch them out. I found that these work perfectly fine the way they are. So I just use the stock ones. I'm going to go ahead and put those back in the baggie before I lose them, because that's what happens around here. All right, so I have to apologize for the state of my tools. They're not available to me right now, so I have one of these old crusty things. All right, so let's take a look here. Here we go. And that is a 1/8? Wow, it's hard to read. So the 1/8, we'll set this aside too. We're not gonna do anything with the grip. Actually, yeah, we are. So once you have the trigger transferred over, it's the same thing as how you pulled it out. Just drop it right in, and you're done. Always remember to just kind of slide it forward a little bit. And again, they flattened that piece out. They took the notch out. So it's got a lot less to work with. I mean, it's not going to slide back all the way like that ever because there's this little pivot pin that goes in there. So you can see how much room you're working with here. Actually, let me swap that out. You can see how much room you're working with here. So you can take a look here with where that little pivot pin, that actuator, will kind of come back and forth. That's all of that is gone now. So as I mentioned, we're going to drop that plate in with my trigger, and we're all set there. I'll set that aside for now. All right, this is the whole assembled uh, spool actuator, whatever the words are. I'm not sure fully exactly what they're calling them, but um, it'll make sense. So we have this here. I'm going to put that aside. If you've ever taken the back end of your Odin apart, so we need to use that 1/8. Set that aside up here. Then on the top, we also have this smaller one. So let's see if I can actually read what that is. Let's see, it's a 1/8 that we're using there. And come on now, let's work. Let's work, eyeballs, come on. Um, well, it's not labeled. So we're just going to have to trust me that this is the right one. Anyway, it's a smaller one. We'll take that one off as well. So these two hold the full spool into the gun body. Once you have those out, you can slide it right out. You'll see the return spring for the bolt. We'll set the body aside as well. The actual bolt itself. So for those of you that don't know, and you're just randomly finding this video, the Odin is a closed bolt. So when it's aired up, it's actually going to slam forward and close off the breech so paintballs can't get in. And then you fire, it's going to drop back with the spring, and then the air will push it back forward. All right, so let's set that aside as well. There are two very large bolts on the back. I believe those are 964. Yes, so we're going to take those two apart as well. All right, there's one. And almost there. There we go. The thread just clicked over, and that's two. Okay, so we'll drop those out into my hand, set those aside as well. All right, so we talked earlier about the little pivot pin. You can see here that's moving that forward and back. There's a little pivot on the inside, and then of course this stock brass piece. This one's super easy. You can just pull it out, and that's done. You can see here the difference between the two. I'll bring those in. Wow, this thing's greasy. Look at my hand. So this is the upgraded version. That's the stock one. And as I mentioned earlier, the pin actually goes into there, into that little receiver. All right, again, we're going to set that one aside. We're not going to drop this in yet because we have to get it in here, take the pivot pin out, and then remove this little piece that moves back and forth. And that one's even tinier, and I couldn't tell you what the size was, and I do apologize for that. I'll probably add it into the description in the notes. So my thing that I do, and I know TJ says differently, to take them both out, and it helps with putting them back together. But that's it's not how I roll. I take one of these out because there's one on each side, and it holds that pivot pin in there. I'm going to tip this over, and it just drops right out. All right, so this is a stock piece. This needs to go back in. Once that's out, this will also drop out. So let's do another comparison here. You can see that they both have notches out of the top. Yep. But on the bottom side, See that there's a notch taken out of this one as well. So the stock one is this beefy one right here, and then the upgraded one is right here. You can tell because it's got a notch on opposite sides. All right, so as I've been saying, we'll set that one to the side. We are actually almost there. So there is that brass piece on the inside of the most forward part of the spool. This is the one. This is the part that scares a lot of people because it's in there. It's definitely in there, especially if you've been using your Odin. It's going to settle. The O-ring might expand a little bit, and all kinds of things that can happen. Don't be afraid. It's okay. We got you. One of the old school tricks is find an Allen wrench around the same size as the hole, stick it in there, but don't like scrape around in there. You don't want to mess this piece up. But you just want to kind of tilt the Allen wrench and then pull, and you can see that it actually pulled out just a little bit. We don't need to have the whole thing come out. Once it's out enough and you clear that O-ring, it just comes right out. So here's that stock piece again. You can see the hole. You can see it's all the one full brass piece that goes in there, and it does the same type of thing. Once it passes that, you're looking at just, I don't even know what the measurement would be on that, but it just passes that lip, and that's how that works right there. All right. Hey, guess what? I set that aside. All right. So what do we do now? We're going to, I've already lubed my O-ring. I'm a fan of taking some like Dow 33, taking the O-ring off, putting it in the channel, and then putting the O-ring back on it. So it just kind of squishes around on the inside and kind of gives it a nice cushion and a little bit of extra lube for it to kind of distribute as the gun settles and more air goes through. As you saw earlier with the stock piece, I pulled out that part and there's that lip. Make sure that goes on the inside. So simple as that. Got the lip, got the receiver into the spool. Should slide right in. Boop. There you go. Should sit flush, and that's all set to go. All right. Let's go back to the back cap. So remember, I took off only one of these grub screws, these set screws, and there's one that's open. So what we need to do is we'll take the upgraded part, and you'll want to make sure that the flat side on the beefier, thicker side is facing away from the back of the cap, or it's facing towards the front of the marker. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide that in. I'm going to take the retainer pin, I'm going to drop it in the hole. So all I'm going to do is just kind of shimmy this around. And there we go, and it just drops right in. And you can tell because you can't pull it out, it only moves forward and back, and there you go, it just went straight in. So now we're all set with that. I'm going to take the same one that we took out earlier, so that same set screw. I'm just going to slide that back in there. And let's get that wrenched back down. Wrong one. Again, I do apologize for not knowing the size on these tinier ones. I just can't see the numbers. All right, so we'll go ahead and spin that on there. Whee! All right, and give it a little bit of torque. Just double check the other one too. All right. So guess what? You got your pin. That's all set to go. You got the retainer pin all set in there. We have the little actuator one with the brass piece and the rod. That drops right in that hole. You're going to line these up so that pin goes in here. And remember, these are much tinier and much more fragile. So let's go ahead and just be real careful. We'll line up that pin, and then we'll line up the center of the spool, and that just goes right back together. We'll take these two larger what did I say earlier, 1/8. That one I can read, right? Yeah. No, 9/64. My apologies. So we'll just spin that back on. There we go. Ooh, that's not right. Let me back that other one out a little bit. There we go. All right, so we'll get those put back on. A little bit of torque, not too much. You don't want to strip those out. That would be terrible. All right. Cool. All right. So guess what? You're done. Spools all put back together. You've been upgraded with the new trigger system. Drop the bolt back on. Drop the spring back on. Let's slide the whole spool assembly in. There we go. We'll put those last two screws back in. And you'll see here that you think that you've got this side one lined up right, but you might not on the top. Um, that's what's cool about this. It's round. You can turn it until that screw feels like it's just dropped in. There we go. Just hand tighten this one on here for now, and then we'll put the other one on, and then we'll crank them down. All right, there's that one. Good to go. And that's the wrong one. There we go. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, you just take those extra screws or the stock ones, put that on the new green plate, slide that puppy forward as far as you can, line up that transfer pipe into that inlet right there, and you'll see that the other screw holes match up that hold the grip to the body. So we'll slide that on. There we go. Just double check, make sure that it's actually in there and not jammed up or bound up because the plate was too far back, and all kinds of things that can happen there. So just going to put these on. Now, some people, including my own, some people have received their Odins with a slight manufacturing issue when it comes to the grip frame. And what happened is that when it comes out of the demolding process, this front part seems like it's just a little bit tilted down. So if you're having problems when you're using it with it just leaking air like crazy from the frame, put this one on first. Crank it down as far as you can without stripping it or breaking it. There we go. And so that leaves this one to ramp downward a little bit. But now when it comes to the equal pressure, it's going to keep that pipe connected the whole time. So now I'm just going to finish just hand torquing that on there. And there you are. I did use this tonight, first night, and the trigger is so much crisper, and you can shoot just all kinds of ropes and lasers and other cliche words that we use when it comes to just throwing a lot of paint. This thing is crazy good now. Um, it's for a $200 gun, and this is literally the $200 version because I didn't get it with the on-off. I got the standard polymer feed neck. I traded this out with one of the ones I have here. Didn't get any barrels with it, so as you can see here, I've got an evil barrel on here. I also use this, and I have I 3D print those finger barrel D10 things. So once the bolt shoves forward and the ball is just going to sit right inside there with those little fingers holding it in. So yeah, but that's the install, you guys. Any questions? Let me know. Throw it into the comments. If you are on M. Carter Brown, hit me up there. I am Cho San Juan. Yeah, weird name. Makes fun times when people realize what it means. Yeah, hit me up there. Also, yeah, if you can find me on the couple of Nova groups that are on Facebook, you can find me there. As long as you see this blue customized, not milsim looking Odin, you found the right person. All right, cool. Again, this is Fred with Intent Paintball, and see you at the 50.